Good morning, my creative friends, and welcome to Painting in Your PJs with Minette. I am Dr. Minette Riordan. I am in my PJs and excited to be here with all of you for the third installment in our November Gratitude Goddesses. So if you're just happening to dip in today to this video, during the month of November, we are creating paper doll chains of goddesses, and my ones that are put together, of course, I didn't bring over here. This is a black and white set that I'm working on. We're going to look at some colored ones today. And every year I like to do a deeper, good morning, Tori, a deeper, more intentional gratitude reflection and process, because I feel like not only is gratitude important, but that we often tend to just make a list or we keep it kind of at that surface level. But when we spend a little time journaling about an aspect of ourself or nature or others a little bit deeper, that something magical can happen, that it settles in our bones, and that we can really feel gratitude in a whole new way. And over the last 2 weeks, we looked at using different kinds of master sheets and both fabric and paper for creating all the paper dolls all at once, so that then each day you can just add embellishments and details to those dolls. So today I'm going to work on the ones I started last week and add embellishments, add some faces to them, but also talk about how we can take some of the words from our journaling and almost make each doll like a little poem or a little prayer of gratitude. Don't know what's going to happen. I never do. If you're brand new here, this is never about me being an art teacher. This is just simply sharing my creative process so that it inspires you to create your own process, to dip in the way that feels joyful. I believe that art as a creative process is such a powerful tool for personal transformation. And if you're brand new here, I'm passionate about supporting women in the second half of their life to really become the queen of their own story, to recognize that midlife is not a crisis, but it's a renaissance. And one of the ways that we can do that is by reconnecting to our inner artist through play, and this month through a playful expression of our gratitude as well. So you can see I have a box or a scattering of chaos here in front of me on the table. I kind of just went around my studio and gathered up a few things. These were the base dolls that I created last week on some old poster board I found tucked away in the studio, and you can see, oh, thank you, Tori. I so appreciate you. And this is a great way to just have something on the page, almost like each little doll. Good morning, Lorraine. Each little doll is like a little mini art journal page in her own right. And so today I want to just give attention to a few of these as we go along, and we are now on the 6th of November. And there is a link to a blog post where you can find both the template for the dolls as well as the list of daily prompts. Don't try to read those. I know they're blurry on the page, but I want to look at, good morning, Anne. I want to look at how we can take some words from our journaling and bring them into our doll to kind of highlight them in a different way. While I'm using each one of these as a little mini journal page where I'll do some writing on the back of the doll, I had that thought of, wouldn't it be nice to pull out some of those words and put them on the front of my dolls as well. And the prompt today is, I offer compassion to the part of me that. I offer compassion to the part of me that. And perhaps I offer compassion to the part of me that feels not enough, or that feels tired, or that feels stressed because there's so much to do at work or at home or wherever. Good morning, Anna. And so I want to think about simply bringing some of my thoughts from my writing onto the front of one of the dolls And it may simply be, I am enough. It might simply be, I offer myself compassion today, right? And so you might be wondering, well, how does gratitude connect to this idea of compassion for the self? So in week 1 of November, we're focusing on gratitude for the self first, because when we fill our own well of gratitude, of joy, of rest, of play, then we give from the overflow. So how compassion is an aspect of gratitude is creating a space for us to pause. My thoughts aren't coming super clearly this morning, but it's a way to invite us to pause and think about my gratitude for compassion. I'm grateful that I can have compassion for myself, that I've done so much healing work over the years that I don't spend as much time in judgment or beating myself up. And I also don't spend as much time uh, giving from an empty well, right? So I am enough might be the thing I'm grateful for today. I have compassion for myself might be the thing that I'm grateful for today. So a way to kind of pull all this together a little bit more visually. And I'm excited to play with paper today. The last couple of weeks I played more with fabric, and it feels fun to come and figure out what we can add to these brightly colored little beauties here. And I even just was chatting with a friend on Zoom the other day, having a catch-up call, and just kind of grabbed my pen. So I'm going to zoom in here and let me go focus in a little bit. Bear with me just 1 minute. That's a little better. We're going to work up close today. There we go. And so I just took a pen and outlined some of the things that were already on the doll, which felt really fun, but it also there's something about these dolls and the shape of them that feel very grandmotherly. And so I'm wanting to add more to these dolls. And you'll see in the email, the Paper Doll Chronicles email list this morning, I sent out these faces. There's 2 pages of faces, this page and this page as well, so that you can either use the faces as they are to collage onto your dolls, or you can use them as inspiration for drawing very simple faces. We're not trying to make these little dolls realistic or perfect. We're just trying to keep them really simple. And that's what I did on some of these black and white ones, right? I just drew super simple faces on the couple of these that I have worked on so far. And I can't wait to work on more of those black and white ones because they are so fun. Yay, Tori, glad you got an earlier spot. See you later. Have a good dentist appointment. So, it can be something as simple as this. This is just a piece of fabric with some painted black and white, and I just literally glued some rickrack and a piece of an old handkerchief on here that I found. So remembering that the dolls don't have to be elaborate, but it's more about how do these become a nice reflection of our gratitude practice. All right, still not quite getting that focus where I want it this morning. There we go. And I'm teaching myself to crochet, and I was digging through a box of thread. I haven't even trimmed this one up yet. And this is some lovely hand-dyed wool from a workshop that I took last year. I'm going to trim those little pieces off, but I thought, wouldn't this little crocheted piece make a lovely apron or even a lovely little shawl on my doll here? So look through your stash and, notice kind of, oh, I actually love it as a shawl. What kind of little bits and pieces do you have lying around the studio that would be perfect to use up for a project like this one? So at least one of my dolls is going to get this piece. I pulled out some fun lace. Look at that with the hearts and it has a little bit of gold trim. My friend Lainey was a stationer and used to do a lot of wedding invitations, and when she retired and was cleaning out her studio, she had all these samples of lace and ribbon that she gave to me, and this was a fun way to use them up, would be for these dolls. In fact, I'm feeling drawn to these cute little hearts that maybe might become part of an apron, or maybe a little bit of trim on the bottom of her gown here. And remember, you can stitch on paper, you can glue things on paper. I also found at the thrift store a while back, I found a bag full of all different, kind of paint your own wood things. And this one has a bucket and a little watering can, I think. Oh, and it has a wheelbarrow. So maybe one of these is going to have a fun little garden theme with some flowers added. So this is again that great way to, I'm actually really loving these little flower buckets and wondering, if I could use those and draw some little flowers on there. So look around your stash, see what you have laying around. I have grabbed all different kinds of things, a few bits of beads and rickrack, and I'm mostly just going to be gluing things on today or using double stick tape to adhere them. Also grab some old jewelry in case any of my paper dolls wanted to get zhuzhed up a little bit. And when I think about adding words to these, I also want to think about where would I add those words. And for some of them, I definitely want to use my typewriter to create some of those words. You can tell I've already been painting in my studio this morning. Where you might want to place those words. So if this is my doll of compassion, to express gratitude for my capacity for compassion, or I'm leaning into the belief that I am enough, or I am loved, or I am creative, so affirmations might be really good on here. So before I put anything else, I might think for a little bit where I might want to put some words on here. And so those don't go together. I love this kind of wordy, grungy piece. Kind of feels like a cute little part of an apron with a couple little buttons stitched on there and maybe some words below. I don't know why I've been into aprons lately and feeling like these ladies enjoy wearing little aprons. That piece isn't quite long enough, but maybe I'll add some lace to it. So you can see how I'm just kind of trying things on for size. I'm not trying to put anything down yet, but I'm thinking through the different elements that I want to add to her to bring her to life. And I think what's going to help me is first to give her a face. And I'm just going to collage these faces on. And as I'm looking at my page of faces here, I'm feeling drawn to this face. So I'm just going to quickly cut this out and try it on, and we'll see if we like this face. And those of you that are watching live, have you started on your dolls? Have you made some dolls? Have you done some of the journaling prompts? One way to do this is just to write one word every day, so I'm someone that likes to journal, and I have an evening gratitude journaling practice, and I've been using these prompts for that. So she definitely needs a little bit more of a neck here, so it feels like it needs to stand up a little higher. I tried to size them to match the templates, but depending on the templates that you're using, you might need to change the size of the faces to fit. I'm just going to grab my glue stick here. But I'm loving how the journal prompts just invite a little more writing, a little more thought and reflection than just a list of gratitudes. My husband and I were talking about this the other day, and he was talking about, well, I'm making my, my list of things, but I think we have to go deeper in our gratitude practice than making a list of today I was grateful for. Well, why were you grateful? And how did it make you feel in the moment? What inspires you to be grateful? Some days I'm grateful for a wonderful catch-up conversation with a girlfriend or a note for a friend. A friend dropped off a beautiful handmade journal on my front porch yesterday. And, it makes me think about how deeply grateful I am for my friendships. Oh, she's very cute. Okay, starting to come to life. She's very simple. Actually, really like the black hair. It feels like it's given her a little bit of contrast there that feels useful. And now that she has a neck, it also feels like I can come in here and stitch this shawl together. So she might end up looking different than I thought. Or what if one of these little buttons was the closure here, in which case would I want to color the little button, or I don't know that that's the right button. I also have this, oh, that one's kind of fun, a very sparkly green button that feels kind of fun, right? So again, it's about trying things on and seeing what it is that you like and what goes with one thing over another thing. All right. I'm going to cut these strings off and hope this whole thing doesn't fall apart. So I think this was like the first thing that I crocheted recently. And I'm sure there's a way to pull that all back together. I'm going to pull that one back in this way. I don't need it to be perfect. And I am going to grab a needle and see if what I've gotten here. So I've got some just pearl cotton embroidery floss that I think will be fine for stitching this together. Again, I don't need it to be perfect. I have a needle with a pretty big eye because the pearl cotton is pretty thick. And I want it to be easy to thread. And we'll see if it's going to be easy to thread or not. And as I work on the details of the doll, part of the intention, all right, doesn't want to go through that one. Bear with me for a minute. So as I'm working on this idea of compassion for the self, because we're in a week where we are honoring compassion, and I'm honoring compassion to that part of me that wants things to be done right. I'm honoring compassion to my inner critic, so perhaps it will, all right, I'm going to get a needle threader here, so that my inner critic can relax and take a break so that I can just have fun and enjoy the process of creating. And remember that our inner critic is there for a reason, right? That inner critic was born at some stage of our life in order to keep us safe from perceived harm, right? So, just start to think about all these things as you work on each of your dolls on a daily basis. Let's see. Do you want the yellow on top or the green on top? So it's a little bigger at the bottom, so it might actually fit a little more neatly this way. Yes, it does. And the nice thing about working with paper or fabric is that it's, pretty easy to move things around and have them be flexible. And I am someone who loves slow stitching and embroidery. I am not someone who knows about a lot about sewing, so I tend to just make it up as I go along, right? So again, I love the way fabric and thread look in my mixed media. So I'm having compassion for the part of me that's like, oh, I should know like the best way to do this or the right way to do it. And there probably is no right way. There might at some point be a better way, but none of that matters right now. Only thing that matters is that I'm having fun. I'm connecting to myself. I'm creating this beautiful reminder of what it looks like to have compassion for myself. This doesn't need to, again, be perfect. It's going to be hidden in here. And a lot of times with like a fun little piece like this that can just hang on the doll, what I love about this, I can always, take it off and reuse it again later. So if you're really attached to something and thinking, oh, I couldn't possibly use that for this project, well, maybe you can. Sometimes we can tape or lightly stitch or paperclip things together in a way that makes it easy to take it apart. And now she's fancy. She feels fancy. And I love that. So, I can have compassion for that part of me who absolutely adores bling, right? And used to wear a lot of bling when I lived in Texas, but this feels like, it just added that little bit between the shawl and the sparkly, glittery button that it just zhuzhed her up a little bit and makes her feel a little fancy. And again, remembering that every day doesn't have to be an elaborate addition to the doll, to keep things pretty simple, right? And so I'm trying to think of my words that I said. What are the words that I would want to put on here? I might even just put I am compassionate in my own handwriting. And knowing that saying I am compassionate in this week of gratitude to the self means that I am practicing being compassionate towards myself. And this is just a piece of scrap paper from the cardstock that I made my dolls on that was just floating around on the table. So no fancy anything here. I could even just simply put the word compassionate, right? Actually, what feels good, thank goodness for glue sticks because they go on and off easily, is I think that I just want the word compassion on there. And just by putting that one word on there, it will remind me what this doll stands for, right? So this is gratitude for compassion. Whether I am receiving compassion, giving compassion, right? Practicing being compassionate with myself. And I'm looking at her thinking, oh, she could really use some white in her hair. So I'm going to come in and, oh, and I dragged my hand through that one. All right, compassion for mistakes. Like I'm creating all kinds of things to be compassionate about with myself today. Give her some little eyelashes there. Just make her feel just a little bit more my own. So there I have my day 6 doll for today, who is my gratitude doll of compassion. And I'm noticing that this little piece over here almost feels like a fun little pocket, like this little something is sticking out of the pocket, which feels fun and festive. And I also have my big box of paint markers here. And I'm wondering if I want to maybe just come in and play a little bit more, add a few more little highlights. So just remembering that each day you get to decide how much or how little you want to add to your doll. You could simply add a face and do a little writing on the back and keep it really simple. She's going to have this little golden ball in her pocket there. Maybe I'll just add a little shimmer. You can just barely see those. So it's a gold Uniball Signo gel pen. Love their gel pens. And it looks like she has some quirky buttons there and maybe a little that gold on her boots. And you could spend hours dressing them up, keeping them really simple. So again, you get to decide how much time you have. But I love my doll of compassion here. And if I were to, I haven't done yesterday's yet because yesterday got really busy. So a strength I didn't know I had. Um, hmm at this point in my life, I know my strengths pretty well. So if I rephrase that maybe of what is gratitude for a strength I do have, that I'm always grateful for my resilience. And actually, I would say compassion and empathy are strengths that maybe, and I can't spell today, are strengths that I didn't always know that I had. And I would even say that gratitude is becoming a strength that I haven't cultivated a lot. In the past on a deeper level. So there's a lot of things, but I'm going to trust that first word that popped up here was resilience. And over on Instagram, I did share pictures of 3 and 4, right? And really honoring that my body has carried me through 60 years, right? Of attention, definitely not treating as well as it could, right? And so many experiences, childbirth, right? So if you haven't looked at the prompts, they're really powerful. I created them with so much intention for you guys. So I highly recommend going over to the blog and checking out those prompts. But now I'm feeling like, let me dig into this idea of resilience. And actually, even better than that, the word that is popping into my head is courage. So a strength I didn't know I had is courage. And it's like we kind of know that, but there's times in our lives when we have to dig in more deeply and push through experiences that are hard, and we always have a lot more courage than we think we do, and courage is often what builds resilience. So let's do one more today and do my day 5 doll, and this is going to be my courage doll. So I'm going to look at these other paper ones that I had here, and this is I love this stuff. I can't remember what it's called. So, oh, roving. No, roving maybe is the big soft one. I can't remember. Any weavers here? Um, but I love this big, fun, like flowy hair. This stuff makes great hair. So last weekend, my husband and I went to a little town called Manitou Springs outside of Colorado Springs. And I'm going to pull these beautiful long curls off because she's feeling, this one feels like she wants some really long hair here. And just outside of Colorado Springs is an amazing creative reuse store called Who Gives a Scrap? Who Gives a Scrap? Been around a long time. It was so well organized and they had so much amazing fabric that I have bought some fabric to perhaps make some um, dimensional dolls. So what I'm thinking in December is that I want to do some dimensional doll making, so some three-dimensional dolls instead of paper dolls for little something different to end our year of doll making together. And I'm just playing with her hair and thinking, okay, I'm gonna glue that on there, maybe trim it up a little bit, but weavers use this stuff, right? You called it angel hair in the crib on the angels. I love that. So let's give her a little bit of a face here. And I'm thinking maybe this face because I'm going to cover up all of that hair. I also like these, but I think these were a little bit too small. And I'm not drawing let's see, here's one. I'm not drawing the faces on because there is glue stick stuck on here, as well as this slick poster board did not feel like a great surface to create on, and that face just feels too small for the size of the body, and I didn't print that set out larger. So I'm going to go with one of these and see if it works better for the size of my doll. Actually, this one is bigger, so maybe we'll try this one. Cut that face out. And I have loved, even though I love to draw faces, I have really also loved having all these collage faces to use that I've created this year. I think it's simplified the process and inspired me in a lot of different ways, or shown me different ways to create faces as well. Yeah, so that size is definitely better. So I'm seeing that in my original template, they don't really have much of a neck, and I kind of like them to have a little bit of a neck. So just noticing that you can always change up the templates and completely make them your own. I'm just going to come in. I think one of the most fun things I bought when I was at Who Gives a Scrap was actually this really pretty box to put all the things that I had bought into the box, but I noticed in their yarn part that they had tons of this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to come in. I've showed this glue before. This precision craft glue is great for this. It's super sticky. It dries pretty fast. It has a nice, really strong hold on it. So we're going to see if it's going to hold our hair here. And I'm going to just kind of make her hair feels like it wants to be really messy, right? It doesn't need to be, oops, I'm gluing the paper to itself, and I might end up having to hot glue or stitch the glue on. And maybe that's a little messier than I want. So, you can see none of this stuff is perfect. This is always very much about just trial and error. There are doll makers who make amazing, super fancy dolls, and I am here for the play and the expression. So I'm not worrying too much about getting it right. And it's just feeling like maybe it's too much here. Maybe that's why I'm struggling. I've even stapled hair on before, so oh, that feels better. She just needed a little bit less mess. So you can staple hair, you can sew hair, you can glue hair. And we'll see if this stuff wants to be glued on. We'll just try a nice, and actually my double stick tape that I love, my score tape, would probably be perfect for this as well. And if I can just get it down to start, I can always fix it up later. But I want you to see what it looks like to just be messy and playful and experiment without feeling that need to get it right, right? So I'm not trying to get it right. I'm being compassionate for the kid in me who's like, oh, this is fun. Let's play. Let me just glue this down. Who cares what it looks like? And one of the ways that I have courage is making mistakes and being okay with those mistakes. Okay, so there she has some hair. I'm going to move her hair out of the way. Might trim some of it up in a little bit, but we've got a little bit of a start on her hair. I have to have a little more glue in there. Hot glue is definitely the best for these kind of dimensional projects. Okay, I love her wild hair. I think I always wanted to have long, super curly hair, and I've always had short hair. And so I think there's something about her that having this super fun hair, and actually she kind of looks like Pippi Longstocking, one of my favorite childhood books as well. So where some of them are feeling much more mature and grandmotherly, right? This one is feeling much more youthful. I'm going to stick the one thing I learned about this is to make sure you keep a pin in the top so that it doesn't get all gummed up in there. And afterwards, I think I will get a little hot glue and just put some hot glue on that hair and get it exactly where I want it. So let's see what else she might like to have. So for feeling a little more childlike here and knowing this is our courage doll, I'm grateful for my courage. Maybe she's going to want some of this lace. Or maybe she's going to want some of these fun little flower pot buttons with her wild hair. Okay, those actually look pretty stinking cute. I need to paint them up and put a little bit of color on them, and then I can draw some flowers coming up for them. It definitely feels like she wants like a little belt or something here. And I'm gonna just put her hair behind so I don't get it caught up in paint or glue or stitching. And we'll keep working on her hair. But I could feel myself getting frustrated with getting it stuck. So, step away, come back. Okay, so I'm thinking these are going to be painted red, like little terracotta pots, but also from a visual creative perspective, bringing some of the red up here back down into this part of our little mini canvas, if you will, here. So I've got just a little tiny tube of Pyrrole Red, Amsterdam Pyrrole Red. Love this color. It's kind of a orangey red. Okay, that's probably way more paint than I need, but that's okay. We'll use it up for something. And I've got kind of a old acrylic brush here that I don't care about. Remember not to use a nice brush, especially painting on wood or canvas, right? Acrylic and canvas can be really hard on your brushes. Or maybe it's a Manette thing. I'm really hard on my brushes. They get frayed very easily. And I'm going to paint around the sides of the buttons because they're going to stand out on our doll. And I'm going to take one of my needles and clean the paint out of those little holes too. Okay, I'm going to set those aside. They should dry pretty quickly. And I'm going to find a baby wipe and clean my fingers off, but I'm loving this sort of brighter red, and I'm wondering if I want to just come in. And you know, they always say redheads shouldn't wear red, but this one is going to. And it's just kind of a way of making sure that we're pulling those colors, creating that sort of cohesiveness. And it's a brighter red. I like the nice pops of bright red. And now it also gives me a clear distinction here between her top and her skirt. And I think I might even go ahead and paint over her arm there. So now all of a sudden I push that color. We talked about that a lot, about creating, you know, mixed media master sheets, and how when you paint over the top of collage or other marks, it pushes the busyness back and makes the piece feel cohesive. So I feel like I've added that next layer of paint that helped to do that here. I guess intuitively, maybe I picked red because red is also one of the colors of that symbolizes, often is used to symbolize courage and passion. I'm going to give her some little red boots here too, just to use up the last little bit of that. Okay, she's looking cute except for the hair. Definitely got to work on that hair. My little buttons are starting to dry up. Grab one of my baby wipes, one of the must-have things in my studio. And I love having painty fingers. I don't care about having painty fingers, but in this instance, what I don't want is to get that red all over everything else that I'm working on, unintentionally, right? So I'm sure, you know, I already got a little bit on the back, but that doesn't matter because I'm just going to be journaling on the back, but this just keeps that little bit of accidental paint off of there. And I am going to take this bigger needle here, and I'm just going to poke that through the holes of those wood buttons to make sure that I actually have holes to sew through when I am ready to stitch them on. And those are still pretty wet. Clean that needle off, stick it back in my needle book over here. And I'm wondering if I want to maybe stitch the flowers on in this bright yellow, again, kind of bringing some of that texture in that I love so much. And I actually still have quite a bit of yellow on my needle from stitching our shawl on here as well. All right, so these are still wet, so I'm not going to glue them on, but I'm going to set them here for just a second. All right, those are going to be very cute when they get stitched on. They're sticking to my fingers, so they're hard to move around, but I want to come in and see where do I want to put my flowers. So I can go ahead and draw the stems. The stems probably need to be a little bit darker green, but we can at least get them started. That bright green shows up nicely on that red. So now I'm going to want to come and decorate my pots, but now I know where I'm going to put my 3 little stitched flowers. Yes, I will glue them down first and then add the stitching, but right now they're still too wet to glue onto the dolls. So I'm trying to let them get a little bit drier, and I may hit them with my hair dryer here in a minute. So let's come in over here. And I love stitching on paper, and sometimes it's a little tricky, and one of the ways that you can get it started is to punch your holes first. And I think that I'm just going to do like a cute little almost sort of dandelion shaped flower on here. We'll start with that one. And then I can turn it over and I can see where I have punched those holes, and it just makes the process a little bit easier. I recently stitched a mandala I had painted on canvas, and I loved the effect of how it came out, but it was definitely hard on the hands, even with the pre-punched holes. I got that right through my knot. Get my knot out of the way there. And an awl, if you're a bookmaker and you have an awl sitting around, an awl is fabulous for punching holes, but you know, your needle works fine as well. And so again, I'm not trying to make these super fancy. I think the one in the center, I'll do a daisy chain stitch because I love the way the little petals of the flowers look. And once I get the flowers stitched on here, then I can come back and add more details with my paint pens or other materials as well. So there we have just one super simple dandelion-like flower. Using just a straight stitch, I can go back. In fact, I may do that because it feels fun. I may come back up here and maybe put a couple of little French knots in here and just give it even a little more dimension. And as I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I can also add some stitching to her belt there. And so you can see there just a little bit of added texture. I can add some stitching along the waistline of her little A-frame dress here. So the other one came together really quickly, and this one is going to take me a little more time, but you know, this is the why we batch created the dolls ahead of time, so that then we could spend the daily 5 minutes or 15 minutes or hour working on our daily dolls. So I definitely know that it is easier to do your French knots with a longer thread, so don't try to, you know, save thread and work right to the end. So love the way that simple little flower looks. We don't even need to have French knots at every single one, although, you know, I'm a bit of a maximalist, so maybe it feels kind of fun to have one everywhere. And I'm going to have to get some more thread here because it gets hard to twist the thread and be able to hold that thread tight. And there's a bazillion YouTube videos teaching you how to do French knots. So I'm not going to show that up too close here. People who are better at teaching that than I am. Okay, she definitely wants lots of knots because that feels very festive and fun. And I'm doing what I said not to do is I'm, not grabbing more thread because I'm like, oh, surely I can push these out. But if you're newer to making French knots, one of the things that I found was easier was longer thread. But I am committed to making this one work. And I'm thinking maybe this center flower wants to be white instead of yellow, so we have a little variety in our flowers here. And we're down to the last of our marigolds and the last of our flowers here. All the leaves are coming off the trees. It's definitely starting to look like winter. So, okay, I love that. Just going to run that through the back quickly. And again, those of you that, love to stitch or love embroidery, I am a messy stitcher and I am happy with my messy stitching. So I keep scraps of thread for smaller projects like this. So I've got just a scrap here of plain white embroidery floss. I'm going to use all 6 strands because I want it to be a chunky flower. And I have, I think, so much paint and sticky stuff on my fingers that I'm struggling to thread my needles today. Did I miss one? Ah, I missed one. This is where, you wish you had the fast forward on the video, or if you're watching the replay, you can definitely fast forward and not watch me struggling to thread my little needle here. Come back to my handy dandy needle threader. And my eyes aren't as good or my hands as steady as they used to be, I think. So I don't know why I struggle, right, to do it myself when I have these awesome needle threaders. All right, so I'm going to do that same thing here. I'm going to punch a hole in the center, and then I'm going to punch each of the holes. You can see I'm having to kind of work hard to punch those holes because there are multiple layers of collage on here as well as paint, and we started with poster board, right? So it's pretty thick. So if you're wondering why it's hard to stitch through on your own, right, give yourself a break and punch those holes first. So I'm going to do a daisy chain here. So I'm going to go back down the same hole that I came up through. I'm going to hold my knot out of the way so my thread doesn't get tangled in the knot. And then I'm going to come up through the top hole in the center of my loop. And the paper is extra thick here, so I'm just noticing it's extra thick. And so now I have this pretty little loop, and I'm going to go right back down through that same hole to tack down the first. So this stitch is basically a variation of the chain stitch. And then I'm going to go right back up through the center again. And this is old embroidery floss. I can see that, it's fraying a little bit. It's all good. Not worried about it. Looks even more like a petal. So I'm going to make my little loop. And go back down through that center, come up over here through my hole, pull that tight, tack that down, go right back through. I didn't try to make my petals all super symmetrical, right? You know, we often think that flowers are perfect, but when you look up close, no two petals really are alike. Get that loop over there. And oops, I got it all the way around her boot because this was a long piece of thread. I'm liking the contrast of the yellow and the white over here. And I think I'll do yellow again here because it's going to stand out really nicely against the red. And this is one that I will finish up and keep working on later today. So what I love is starting and doing the messy part of these projects when I'm down here in my studio. And then in the evenings, I take them upstairs where I'm sitting, watching TV or chatting with my hubby and work on them in the evening. I want to make sure that loop is not twisted over there. So this one is going to definitely probably take me another at least half an hour to get all these pieces, the stitching done, the buttons attached, right? So when you think about you don't have to finish these all in one sitting. So, you know, if you have a little time, one part of the day, add a little something, something, and then come back later and add something perhaps a little bit different. And I think this daisy is going to need a nice French knot right in the center. All right, one more petal and it will be mostly round. I'm going to come up right in the center there, towards the top of that. Make my loop. And with fabric, you can put your needle, you know, in the fabric and bend the fabric and come up. There's, you know, quicker ways to do this when you're working on fabric. It's a little more tedious when you're working on paper because this paper in particular is pretty stiff. So be patient with yourself as you're working on your dolls. Like, take the time that you need and really just enjoy leaning into them and being with them. So this one is going to be super fun to finish. I'm surprised that I got this far on two of them. Awesome, Lorraine. That's the point. You've cut them all out and you're decorating them daily. That's kind of the idea here. Definitely going to want a darker green stem on these so our stems show up a little bit better. And you can see my back is messy. Let it be messy. She definitely needs her hair all fixed up. Oh, maybe she wants to have a little bun like our little... haven't decided yet. Okay, still parts and pieces to work on and to finish up, but we got one done and one to go. My little buttons are getting nice and dry here. So I'm going to glue those on. They may need to get painted up or have some patterns added to them as well. And these little wood buttons are going to take a while to dry, so I will let these dry and then finish this little doll up. She is going to be pretty when she's finished. And it's nice to have time to put into some of these. And some of these I have just, a few minutes here and there to work on, and they stay pretty simple. So again, don't get caught up in making everything super elaborate, because when we focus on having things be really elaborate and we're in the middle of a 30-day challenge, what happens is that we're going to get feeling like we're behind or frustrated. She really wants those nice bangs there. Okay, definitely going to be a hot glue gun activity to get this on there, because I have a vision of how I want it to be, kind of a little bouffant there, right? But we'll get her all glued and coming together. But it feels like she has kind of a nice start, more to do. This one feels like she's finished. So we have our compassion gratitude doll today. And I'm thinking the word courage may just go right up here. I could even write the word directly on here. And again, it feels like I'm gonna, add a little stitching along there. Being left-handed, I always drag my hand through everything, right? So we have our courage doll and our compassion doll and more things to finish up, but a good start on those two for the day. And I hope you have a blast working on your dolls this week. And even if you don't have time to work on the dolls, to take some time with the prompts, because the prompts really are the most important part. Well, hello, that just came flying out of nowhere. So maybe this is what's supposed to be sitting in her little uh, pocket right there. So more to come. Have fun. Enjoy your dolls. Come hang out with me on Instagram, where I'm showing more of the day-to-day finished one at Dr. Minette Riordan over on Instagram. And if you're on Instagram, share your paper dolls as well. Use the hashtag gratitude goddesses and tag me at Dr. Minette Riordan over on Instagram, because I would love to see what it is that you are creating as well. And it's so fun to go from just kind of a pile of mess to these sweet little dolls in progress. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you for joining me live. Thank you for those of you catching the replay. Drop me a comment or a little note and click that thumbs up button so that other people also know that it's a video worth watching. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Dr. Minette Riordan. Until next week. Bye-bye.